She was an independent young woman trying to make something of herself.
She had a tough go of it at the start.
She wanted to do better than the circumstances that she was brought into.
And on her path to success, she met a more mature man who shared her ambitions.
He says, I love you. I want to make a life with you.
He filled that void that a man of her age couldn't give her.
But their May-December romance is abruptly cut short.
It had to be kind of shocking to find out from a social media post that your loved one is missing.
Why weren't we told about this sooner?
Did she fall prey to a troubled past?
He mentions this male, goes by the name of Bear.
They're goons, they're killers, they don't play.
Or did a strange obsession lead to deadly consequences?
He would watch her on his camera. She had no idea that he was living two lives.
Something's in there, man.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
November 12, 2022. It's only a few weeks away from Thanksgiving in Cleveland, Ohio.
In the city of Cleveland, a lot of people look forward to Thanksgiving because it reminds people of family. It gives us a chance to kind of huddle together and have kind of a respite from the day-to-day grinds of society.
The leaves are turning. People are getting prepared to have their meals, and there's just a sense of excitement in the air.
Cleveland resident Candy Moore is no exception. But on this chilly Saturday morning, as she's scrolling through social media, Candy sees a post that takes her breath away.
It's an Instagram post from the account Cleveland Remembrance page. It's kind of like an unofficial neighborhood news source.
The post mentions Candy's niece, 23-year-old Adriana Taylor.
Adriana Taylor is missing.
The post was from some friends that had given the page information that she'd been missing for quite some time.
But this is the first time Candy is hearing about Adriana's disappearance.
It had to be kind of shocking to find out from a social media post that your loved one is missing.
At the time that the aunt finally saw the information, her niece had been missing almost 30 days.
Concerned by what she's just read, Candy tries to contact Adriana, but her calls go straight to voicemail.
That alarmed her.
She thought something was going on that wasn't right.
Your mind is spiraling. You're trying to figure out exactly how this could ever happen to you or your family member and how to fix it as quickly as possible.
23-year-old Adriana Taylor grabbed attention wherever she went.
Her smile, her heart, she would talk to everybody, make everybody feel good. She was fun.
She was such a loving and supportive person to the people that were around her.
She was very generous. She would give you the shirt off her back.
Adriana's inner light was all the more remarkable given her upbringing.
She didn't have the easiest of lives.
The parents weren't really in the picture all that much. She bounced around from family and friends.
Adriana was one of 6 kids and pretty much was raised by her grandparents.
It's common for people who don't have that relationship or that bond with their parents to not be able to flourish, but Adriana was able to beat those odds.
She had been through some things, but had come out on top with a good heart and a good spirit.
As soon as she was able, Adriana joined the workforce.
She had a job at the distribution plant. She was a hard worker.
She was out here trying to make a better life for herself by making an honest living.
Adriana really was committed to living a life of stability and family because that was what she was missing and that's what she craved.
So when Adriana's coworker, 43-year-old Anthony Kennedy, began showing interest in her, she was intrigued.
Hey, Adriana.
Hey.
How was your weekend?
It was good. I just chilled. It was pretty nice.
She wanted somebody who would protect her, somebody who would provide for her, somebody who would love her.
Somebody like Anthony.
Anthony was a nice guy, quiet, reserved. He wore glasses. He seemed responsible.
He was actually her supervisor, but he was creative, he was intelligent, good with numbers, he was helpful.
He showed Adriana that he was interested in her. He pursued her.
So look, this may sound a little weird, but are you busy later?
No, I was just gonna go home. Why?
Would you like to go to dinner?
I would love that.
Anthony on paper, checked the boxes. Being loving, being financially secure. They had that chemistry and things just moved on from there.
Before they knew it, Adriana and Anthony were building a life together.
The relationship moved very quickly. They moved in, they fell in love. He says, I love you. I want to make a life with you. You can see why she would have thought this is the perfect guy. Adriana's life was becoming something that she had longed for. Having a secure relationship that was going to last.
But now, just 2 weeks before the start of the holiday season, Adriana's aunt, Candy Moore, has come across an alarming social media post.
The post says that Adriana's missing.
She was concerned. She wanted answers about what had happened to Adriana.
This is Adriana's aunt.
Candy immediately reaches out to Adriana's friend, Michaela Knowles, who appears to have submitted the post to the Cleveland Remembrance page.
Why didn't you contact us sooner?
I don't know. I guess
I just got nervous. I was blowing things out of proportion.
How long?
But Michaela says the last time she talked to Adriana on October 8th, something definitely seemed off.
While they were on the phone, she heard something disturbing.
She said that she sounded a little scared.
Is everything okay over there?
Gunshots were heard in the background, and the phone disconnected.
Adriana.
That was her last interaction, and no one has heard from her since.
After overcoming a difficult upbringing, 23-year-old Adriana Taylor had finally found her footing in life.
She had a good job. She had friends that cared about her.
She also found the man she wanted to share a future with, her co-worker, 43-year-old Anthony Kennedy.
What she saw in Anthony was a maturity. Anthony filled that void that a less mature man of her age couldn't give her.
But now Adriana's aunt, Candy Moore, is panicking after discovering that her niece hasn't been seen in over a month.
The last time that anyone reportedly heard from Adriana, gunshots were heard in the background.
Adriana.
This is extremely concerning.
It's a wonder why the friend didn't come right out and report that. And a lot of times, people just don't want to get that deeply involved. They don't know if it's really something, if it's really nothing.
I am so sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I was just so scared.
Within the African American community, there is a distrust of our police force. And it makes it hard to trust that they're going to follow through, they're going to care.
Regardless, Adriana's aunt knows it's time to involve the authorities. So on November 13th, 2022, she contacts the Cleveland Police Department to report Adriana missing.
She loved Adriana and she wanted her found.
Thank you for coming in, ma'am. Now, it's our understanding the last contact anyone had with her was October, is that correct?
That's what I was told.
We kind of learned that there seemed to be a little bit of strain with the family, and not speaking on a regular basis didn't seem super unusual. She didn't have contact with her family or even friends every day.
Adriana's aunt tells the police that her niece has been living with a boyfriend, Anthony Kennedy.
She also tells them about Adriana's disturbing final phone call.
Her friend said that they were talking on the phone when she heard gunshots.
The first thing that popped in my head was, why weren't we told about this sooner?
Thank you very much.
The timeline is very disturbing. Adriana was last seen in October, but she wasn't declared officially missing until almost mid-November. What happened in that time frame?
We need to immediately jump on this investigation.
Police start by heading to the rental Adriana and Anthony shared on the west side of town.
They knocked on the door and no one answered. It didn't look like anyone was home.
Detectives call Anthony and leave a voicemail asking him to contact them as soon as possible. And while they wait to hear back, they put out an APB on Adriana's car, a white Ford sedan.
Upon finding out Adriana had a car registered to her, I immediately took steps to find out if the vehicle's been towed, if it's in the impound lot, if it was, seen anywhere on any law enforcement databases.
Police learned that Adriana's vehicle was last spotted by traffic cameras on October 12th, over a month earlier.
Which was just a few days after her friend had spoken with Adriana.
Adriana's vehicle was last seen traveling towards Pennsylvania.
Cleveland police issue an alert for law enforcement in and around western Pennsylvania to be on the lookout for Adriana's vehicle.
Our primary concern is, where is this car?
But even though Adriana's vehicle is still in the wind, her boyfriend, Anthony Kennedy, has finally resurfaced.
He agreed to come down to the police station for an interview.
Once Anthony gets interviewed by detectives, his story is that Adriana has moved out of his house a month ago or so.
She lived with you for a couple months, but left about a month ago. Mm-hmm. So by the beginning of October? Beginning of October into September. Okay.
Anthony says that while he and Adriana were in love a few months earlier, that changed fast after she moved in with him.
Anthony told police that Adriana had a drug habit.
Anthony says he first heard gossip about Adriana's drug use at work, but he refused to believe it.
There's all these rumors, but I'm like, don't come to me in the room because unless I physically see it, I don't know, right? Then I found little blue pills.
He noted that the drug was fentanyl, and we know that there's an opioid crisis in America.
They should stand with me. And it will disappear for 3 days, stay 2 days, disappear for a day, stay 3 days, disappear for a week.
Anthony claimed that she couldn't keep her job because she couldn't hold it together with all of the substance abuse.
As her supervisor, Anthony says he was forced to fire her from her role at the distribution plant. And he soon put his foot down at home, too.
I told her, I said, you can't be here no more. You gotta leave. You're causing too much problems. You're doing drugs.
He ended the relationship.
Anthony!
He's kicked her out.
And he says he hasn't talked to her since.
I think I tried to call her. She didn't answer. I just went straight away from me.
However, Anthony tells detectives he's heard whispers about what Adriana's been up to since their breakup.
There's rumors around where, oh, she's thinking what to do.
Anthony told police that Adriana had gotten back with an ex-boyfriend.
But Anthony's weary to give detectives the ex-boyfriend's name.
I don't want to end up dead. No, I don't want to end up dead either. I have a name, but I don't.
The reason for his anxiety soon becomes clear.
Anthony told police that Adriana used to date somebody who was a known drug dealer.
This wasn't some small-time street corner dealer. This was somebody who was moving weight.
A big name, a big drug name.
The type of man who could make a person disappear.
This is a dangerous man we're talking about.
They're goons, they're killers, they don't play.
48 hours after 23-year-old Adriana Taylor was reported missing in Cleveland, Ohio, her co-worker turned boyfriend, Anthony Kennedy, has just given police their first lead.
Anthony told police that Adriana had started using drugs and that maybe she'd gotten back with an ex-boyfriend who was a drug dealer.
And I believe she's messing. I don't know if he's the kingpin or one of the bigger people there.
However, Anthony is hesitant to tell the investigators everything he knows.
Just hang tight. It's okay. All right? I don't want my life to be in danger. Okay. I don't want your life to be in danger either.
Ultimately, Anthony pushes through his fear to give the police a name, or at least a nickname.
Bear. Bear? Like the animal or the drink? Bear? Okay.
He mentions this male, goes by the name of Bear, but alludes to the fact that he has something to do with her disappearance.
I feel like my life's in danger now. I really do. The kind of relationship I just gave you, I feel like my life's in danger.
Anthony goes on to say he's heard rumors that Bear is expanding his drug operation.
The guy that she was with was actually trying to expand into Pennsylvania.
Could that explain why Adriana's car was last seen traveling in that direction?
There was a possibility that this was the reason that Adriana was going to that area because of her new relationship with Bear.
And if Bear is as dangerous a person as Anthony's saying, it's all the more reason police need to look into him.
It's not something that the police can overlook.
Police know drugs and violence go hand in hand. If something happened to Adriana, this could be the explanation.
But before the detectives can make much headway in locating Bear, a new lead emerges from yet another state, West Virginia.
Turns out Adriana's car was pulled over in West Virginia in October.
The traffic stop occurred on October 3rd, a week before surveillance cameras spotted the vehicle heading toward Pennsylvania, and just a few days before Adriana's alarming phone call with her friend, Michaela Knowles.
There were two people in the car. It is not known if the other passenger was Bear, but what is known is that there was possible drugs in the car.
The officer who pulled them over noted that the car had illegally tinted windows and was seen leaving a known trap house. However, no drugs were located in the vehicle at that time.
They were allowed to leave with just a citation for the tinted windows.
The information investigators are hearing seems to line up with what they've learned from Anthony Kennedy.
I told her, you're causing too much problems. You're doing drugs.
But where is Adriana now? And what about the man she was last seen with?
We followed up on these leads. We reached out to hospitals, some of the shelters, normal places where you would expect someone that maybe had OD'd or was looking for some kind of help would turn up, and we found no trace of that at all.
And it was like she just vanished.
At this point of the investigation, there now seems to be more questions than answers.
But then, detectives receive a promising phone call from their colleagues in Pennsylvania.
We received information from a small suburb of Pittsburgh that they had towed her car. It was just abandoned on the street in a no parking zone.
I don't know where the car was at exactly, but the amount of dirt and fires.
Obviously, it's been sitting a while with these leaves and stuff.
Cleveland investigators think this could be the break they've been waiting for.
We got pretty excited when we found out that her car had been found. Now again, we have another tangible lead that we can follow.
However, when Cleveland detectives arrive in Pennsylvania to examine Adriana's vehicle themselves, their hopes soon turn to new fears.
They notified us that they found quite a bit of cleaning solution throughout the vehicle.
There were several spots of blood spatter.
The alarm bells rang.
On November 16th, 4 days into the search for 23-year-old Adriana Taylor, Cleveland detectives have learned that Adriana's missing sedan has been located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh police let them know, hey, this car's been abandoned here for a little bit. I think you guys should come and look at it.
We immediately made arrangements to travel to Pittsburgh, to the area where her vehicle was recovered.
And when detectives arrive to examine the vehicle, they make a troubling discovery.
We learned the car had been cleaned.
Someone had scrubbed the vehicle from top to bottom.
But that's not all.
There were several spots of blood spatter on both the inside and outside of the vehicle. And the blood was a match for Adriana Taylor.
It's evidence that points to a disturbing possibility.
It seems like there's foul play.
That kind of gave me more of an alarm bell, as like something really might be wrong here.
With this chilling new evidence in tow, detectives start making rounds with residents on the street where Adriana's abandoned vehicle was found.
We were able to canvass the neighborhood.
They quickly turn up a promising witness.
And we're here because there was a car found in your alley. You're familiar with this. We know this obviously.
The man describes something suspicious he witnessed on the night of October 12th.
I saw the car pull up. Okay. The guy got out of the car and he opened both back doors, took something out in a plastic bag and threw it in the dumpster that was back there. Then he checked the rest of the car around, didn't open the trunk, but he did check the rest of the car and then locked the doors and then walked that way.
Walk that way. Okay. Yeah.
We learned from witnesses on scene that someone dropped off the car, cleaned it, and threw away some cleaning supplies in a dumpster.
Detectives search the dumpster for evidence, but they're out of luck.
The dumpster had already been emptied several times since the incident occurred. It was frustrating to miss out on whatever that evidence might have been.
Now more concerned than ever that Adriana's disappearance could involve foul play, investigators circle back to inform Adriana's Aunt Candy of what they've learned so far.
Adriana's loved ones were still hopeful that she would be found alive, but it was becoming harder to hold on to those hopes by the day.
It was devastating. You can't wrap your mind around it.
Hoping to verify the leads they've gotten from Anthony Kennedy, detectives inquire about Adriana's alleged drug use.
We did end up verifying that she was friends with some individuals that, did have a history of drug behavior.
But the people who know Adriana best insist she wasn't a part of that.
She didn't use drugs at all.
Maybe some pot here and there, but that was it.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
We weren't really able to substantiate that she was ever into drugs.
Detectives also inquire about the man known as Bear, who Anthony penned as Adriana's drug-dealing lover.
Okay, what about a guy named Bear? Do you know him?
Yeah, I knew him. He was a friend of hers.
A boyfriend, right?
No, just a friend.
From what we were getting from everyone, Bear was like a brother to Adriana.
Okay, do you know if he was dealing drugs?
Bear? No way.
Michaela laughed at the idea of Bear being involved in drug dealing. She said that's not the kind of guy that he was at all.
Which forces the investigators to rethink everything they've been led to believe.
Anthony told us Bear deals drugs, and he was kind of casting blame upon him.
They're goons, they're killers, they don't play.
Police are not sure what's going on, how truthful this is.
It set off suspicions. Well, what's really going on here?
With Michaela's help, police are finally able to track down Bear, who they identify as 25-year-old Jabari Williams.
Were you in a romantic relationship with Adriana?
Nah, nothing like that. I mean, we hung out sometimes.
He was, in fact, Adriana's friend.
It was just an amicable relationship between two adults.
And according to Jabari, he hasn't seen Adriana in months.
When was the last time you saw her?
Probably July, maybe August.
His phone records appear to support what he's telling the police.
Other than what Anthony had told us about Bear, there was really no link between Bear and Adriana around the time of her disappearance.
Now with Bear in the clear, all roads lead back to one man, Anthony Kennedy.
It just seemed like Anthony had created a scapegoat almost, and wanted us to believe it was Bear.
Hoping to learn more about Anthony's relationship with Adriana, detectives head to the distribution plant where they both worked.
Once the police start to have these conversations with Adriana's coworkers, they start to make connections that Adriana and Anthony's relationship was not as pleasant as they thought it was.
According to coworkers, the couple's relationship had been a source of trouble from the beginning.
Anthony had actually been written up at one point because of his relationship with Adriana. As her direct supervisor, he shouldn't have had any kind of, extracurricular relationship with her.
The 20-year age gap between them also made some of their colleagues uncomfortable.
The age difference was somewhat alarming.
What it says to me about Anthony is that he was looking for someone who he would be able to maybe manipulate or even control.
When detectives ask Adriana's coworkers about the circumstances under which she was fired, they realize Anthony has misled them once again.
Adriana was let go, but she was not let go, the distribution center said, because of drugs.
She was ultimately let go because of 2 no-call, no-shows.
Her firing happened in early October, around the same time she went missing.
That would mean that Anthony Kennedy's version of what happened seemed to be a lie.
In the weeks after Adriana disappeared, employees say that Anthony's behavior grew increasingly alarming.
Anthony told one of their co-workers that he had cameras installed in their home to be able to see what Adriana was doing.
He has almost like an obsession with her. He would watch her on his camera. He talked about her constantly.
Anthony's co-workers tell detectives that when a rumor began to spread in October of 2022, his obsession evolved into jealousy.
There was some rumors going around that there was a video out there of Adriana engaging in sexual activity with another man that worked at the distribution center.
What are you laughing at?
Nothing, man. Just a video we found online, dude. Chill.
It was never proven that this was true, but this was certainly something that Anthony himself heard.
We learned from coworkers of Anthony that he made some offhand comments that he's going to kill her because of this alleged infidelity in their relationship.
She's done!
What is this problem?
But as investigators dig deeper, they're shocked to discover Anthony was the one making moves behind closed doors.
Anthony was living a double life.
We learned that he was actually married.
Detectives investigating the disappearance of 23-year-old Adriana Taylor have just unearthed alarming new information about her 43-year-old boyfriend, Anthony Kennedy.
There was a rumor going around work that Anthony was jealous because he'd heard that Adriana had made a sex tape with someone else.
She's done!
What are you talking about?
Anthony was heard to have said that he was going to kill her.
It's really disturbing. It kind of makes you wonder, what is going through his head?
And as investigators dig deeper into Anthony's past, they learn that they've only scratched the surface.
Anthony was hiding a lot of secrets, but one of the biggest secrets he was hiding was that he was married. Anthony was living a double life. He was legally married to somebody else, but here he was pursuing this younger woman at work.
When detectives contact Anthony's wife, Anastasia, she agrees to come into the station to speak with them.
Anastasia was shocked to find out that Anthony had been living with a woman in his apartment for 4 months.
I just can't believe this.
I'm so sorry, ma'am.
Anastasia tells detectives that she and Anthony were married in July of 2022, but even after exchanging vows, her husband insisted on keeping separate residences.
He was telling her that he has this lease that he can't break, and he has to stay here until it's over with.
When their leases were up, they were supposed to move in together.
Anastasia's work as a traveling nurse meant the couple spent long periods of time apart.
She had not seen Anthony in the whole month of October.
She had no idea that he was essentially living two lives. She was in complete disbelief. So he must have done a good job of keeping his two lives completely separate.
As far as the investigators are concerned, they've heard everything they need to know about Anthony Kennedy. Now, they just need to find him.
They move in for the arrest, but Anthony is on the run.
However, investigators secure a warrant to search the rental he once shared with Adriana.
Inside the apartment, it's packaged as if someone's moving, and we're immediately struck by the living room.
The carpet had been ripped up.
It was at that time that we all kind of got a sinking feeling and knew something bad had happened here.
Investigators find more concerning evidence in Anthony's backyard.
There's a giant burn mark in the rear of the driveway with what appears to be fabric within it.
Anthony had burned something large back there.
At this point, obviously, Anthony is suspect number one.
And the next day, he finally shows up at the Cleveland Police Department, ready to talk.
He wanted to kind of get this straightened out and take care of it.
Investigators start asking questions.
The carpeting being removed from the apartment. Why'd you do that? Because of bed bugs.
Anthony also attributes the burn marks in his driveway to bed bugs.
Where did you see the bed bugs at? I saw it on the couch because it bit me, and I see it was all in the lining of the couch. So you cut the couch up? I cut the couch up and burned it.
Our initial reaction was deception. Everything he said to us seemed to be deceptive, short answers, kind of not making sense, talking in circles.
But as much as police suspect Anthony's involvement in Adriana's disappearance, they lack the physical evidence to prove it.
Things are still very circumstantial. There's actually not even a body. We, at this point, don't even know whether Adriana is dead or alive.
So as the Thanksgiving holiday approaches, the prime suspect in Adriana's disappearance remains a free man.
We've kind of come to a bit of a standstill on it. After the holidays, we're going to regroup, hit it hard again.
But on the night of November 24th, a stunning discovery immediately reignites the investigation.
Oh, shine that on there. That's a hand.
Oh, wow. Oh,
2 weeks after 23-year-old Adriana Taylor was reported missing, the investigation into her disappearance has come to a standstill.
The police had suspected that Adriana's boyfriend, Anthony Kennedy, was behind her disappearance. However, they didn't have enough evidence to prove it.
But at 11 p.m. on the night before Thanksgiving, as Cleveland investigators lay sleeping, police 140 miles away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, are responding to an alarming 911 call.
The landlord is calling police because a suspicious male appears to be digging in his backyard, and he's watching the whole thing live on his cameras.
By the time police arrive, the mystery man has fled.
he was back here for an hour. We had him on camera. Dude, submit.
That's weird.
Was immediately suspicious, and the landlord wants the spot dug into. He wants to know what he's doing back there.
Let me try to get on that side and I'll try to lift it up.
Ultimately, the police kind of moved the debris, fresh, wet concrete, underneath all of this.
Something's in there, man.
I hope it's not a dead body. Shine that on there. That's a hand.
Oh, wow. What?
After radioing for backup, officers speak to the landlord's tenant, who had been living inside his rental property for several months.
They showed her the security video, and she instantly recognized the man on the tape.
So this guy's your relative?
He's my brother.
What's your brother's name?
Anthony Kennedy.
When news of these events reaches Cleveland, the detectives working Adriana's missing persons case are stunned.
I woke up Thanksgiving morning to about 100 missed calls and come to find out that they had found Adriana's body in Pennsylvania. And there was Ring camera footage. I was in disbelief. Like, all of our jaws were on the floor. Like, it's very rare to discover a buried body, let alone capture the whole thing on 4K HD video.
An autopsy soon confirms just how Adriana died.
Adriana was killed with a single gunshot wound to the top of her head. From the angle, it appeared that she had to have been laying or sitting at the time she was shot.
Investigators believe Adriana was killed not long after she spoke to Michaela Knowles on the phone for the last time. And when they received video footage seized from Anthony's home security cameras, their suspicions are confirmed.
On the day that we're pretty sure Adriana is killed, Anthony comes home from work, distraught, rips down the camera, and at the same time, inside the home, you see Adriana wearing the exact clothing that she was found buried in.
Although what happened next wasn't caught on camera, investigators are confident they now know how Adriana died.
When Anthony takes that camera off, it really just tells us that he intends to do something bad.
Police believe that Adriana and Anthony got into a fight.
A fight over a videotape that didn't exist.
They started arguing over the supposed videotape of Adriana sleeping with another man.
How could you do this to me?
Anthony, you need to calm down. I didn't do anything to you, okay?
You're a liar!
Lying about?
Everybody at work talking about
What are you talking about? Nobody said anything. Whatever it is, it might be a lie.
He thought that Adriana was cheating on him. He felt betrayed and angry.
Investigators believe that during a break in the argument, Adriana made a phone call to her friend, Michaela.
Well, what are you up to?
But Anthony wasn't done.
So you think you can just disrespect me, right?
Girl, just hold on. Give me 1 second.
Anthony was waving a gun around and began firing.
Calm down, Anthony, please!
However, police believe the gunshots Adriana's friend heard on the phone weren't the ones that killed her.
We believe that she was shot laying down on the couch, possibly even shot taking a nap, which is the reason for the couch being burned in Anthony's backyard.
It's completely premeditated. It's unfeeling. It's horrific.
After Adriana was dead, Anthony came up with a plan to hide her body in the backyard of his sister's rental home, 140 miles away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
When he became a suspect in the investigation, he started to worry that he hadn't done a good enough job.
As police closed in on him, Anthony returned to his sister's rental the night before Thanksgiving to improve the burial. And thanks to the landlord's surveillance camera, it was all caught on tape.
Between the first burial and the second reburial, the landlord had actually signed up for a free trial to Ring. Unfortunately for Anthony, he picked the time to rebury the body right in the middle of that free trial. There's some kind of divine intervention.
Investigators are now confident they have the evidence they need to charge Anthony with Adriana's murder.
He's obviously dangerous, so it was our top priority to get him in custody. A lawyer reaches out to us and says that he's been retained by Anthony's family, and this lawyer negotiated his surrender.
Anthony eventually turns himself in and immediately starts talking about a plea deal.
Once he was in custody, it was a lot of conversation between lawyers, but he ended up taking a plea.
Despite Anthony's willingness to plead guilty, the court shows him little mercy.
The judge sentenced Anthony to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 23 years.
I think Anthony is where he belongs.
Fueled by rage and jealousy, Anthony Kennedy committed an act of unthinkable violence.
It seemed like Anthony really wanted to have it all. He wanted to be able to live his life in ways that he wanted to, while also controlling how other people live their lives.
And in his pursuit of power and control, he destroyed the life of a young woman whose future was full of promise.
She wanted to make something of herself. She was on her way.
This is a cautionary tale for everyone, especially young women. Be careful of who you select as your partner and do your due diligence. At the end of the day, it could save your life.
He smiled at the funeral. 27 years later, new DNA technology exposed him as the murderer. Part 1. The man stood only 6 feet from the coffin when the victim's mother collapsed screaming onto the church floor, and while relatives rushed forward trying to hold her upright, while the organ music trembled through the crowded chapel, while snow hammered against stained glass windows under a gray February sky, he smiled. Not a wide smile. Not enough for anyone to notice in real time. Just the faintest movement at the corner of his mouth, captured accidentally by a home video camera, recording the funeral service. A single frozen expression buried inside old VHS footage for nearly 3 decades before detectives would finally rewind it frame by frame and realize the killer had attended the burial of the girl he murdered in Black Hollow County. People still talk about that smile as if it belonged to something inhuman. Because normal people cry at funerals. Normal people look away from grief. But according to investigators who would later spend years studying his behavior, Daniel Reeves looked almost relieved. The town itself barely existed on most maps. Black Hollow sat buried between miles of dead farmland and collapsing factory roads where rusted smokestacks leaned over frozen rivers like gravestones. Population 11,000 on paper, fewer in reality. Most young people left after graduation. Those who stayed worked long shifts in warehouses, machine shops, or trucking depots. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew who drank too much, who cheated on their spouse, who owed money, who got arrested after football games. Secrets traveled fast in Black Hollow, which is exactly why nobody could understand how a 17-year-old girl vanished into darkness without a single person seeing what happened. Her name was Emily Carter. Brown hair, green eyes, honor roll student, waitress at Rosie's Grill 3 nights a week after school. Friends described her as loud, funny, stubborn, impossible to intimidate, the kind of girl who laughed during horror movies and blasted music with the windows down even during winter. She wanted to leave Black Hollow after graduation, wanted New York, Chicago, anywhere bigger than the dying town. She called a prison wrapped in snow. On February 14th, 1994, Emily finished her shift shortly after 10 p.m. The snowstorm outside had become vicious by then, thick waves of ice blowing sideways across empty streets. Rosie's Grill sat near the edge of Route 16, glowing red beneath flickering neon signs, while 18-wheelers roared through the darkness. Inside, waitresses stacked chairs on the tables and scrubbed coffee stains from counters, while a radio station played slow love songs for Valentine's Day. Emily complained about the weather, joked that her car would probably slide into a ditch, then suddenly stopped laughing when she noticed something outside the diner window. A truck, dark-colored, parked across the street, watching. One co-worker later told detectives Emily became nervous immediately. She recognized the vehicle, or at least thought she did. When asked who she believed was inside, Emily reportedly answered with 4 words investigators would never forget. "I hope it's not him." The co-worker assumed she meant an ex-boyfriend. Small-town drama. Nothing unusual. Emily walked into the kitchen moments later, called someone from the payphone near the hallway, spoke for less than 20 seconds, then grabbed her coat and stepped outside into the storm. That was the last confirmed moment anyone saw her alive. At first, nobody panicked. Teenagers disappear for a few hours all the time, especially on Valentine's Day. But when Emily failed to return home by midnight, her mother started calling friends. By 1:30 a.m., she contacted police. Sheriff Harold Bennett initially believed Emily had run off voluntarily. Then deputies discovered her car still parked behind Rosie's Grill. The engine was cold. The doors were locked. Her purse remained on the passenger seat beside scattered cassette tapes and a half-finished soda. But Emily was gone. Deputies searched the surrounding area for hours beneath freezing wind. Snow buried the road so heavily investigators struggled to preserve footprints. Search dogs lost the scent near the highway. One deputy claimed he found tire impressions leading toward the woods, but by sunrise the storm had erased everything. The disappearance exploded across Black Hollow by morning. Church groups organized search parties. Volunteers combed through frozen fields carrying flashlights and thermoses of coffee. Helicopters circled over abandoned railroad lines. The FBI arrived within 48 hours after media coverage spread into neighboring counties. Emily's school canceled basketball games. Students taped missing person flyers across storefront windows. Fear moved through the town like infection. Parents stopped letting children walk home alone. Every unknown vehicle became suspicious. Every rumor sounded possible. Then investigators uncovered the first disturbing detail. Witnesses reported seeing Emily arguing with an older man several days before she vanished. Not her boyfriend. Not anyone from school. A married man. Daniel Reeves, 32 years old, church volunteer, assistant manager at Grayson Hardware Supply, married with 2 children, clean-cut, soft-spoken, the kind of man neighbors described as dependable. He coached Little League during summer, helped organize church fundraisers during winter, never arrested, never violent, never even raised his voice publicly. And according to at least 2 witnesses, he had become strangely interested in Emily during the months before her disappearance. One waitress from Rosie's Grill told detectives Daniel visited the diner almost every night Emily worked. He always sat in the same booth, always tipped heavily, always watched her. Another witness claimed Emily once called him creepy after catching him staring at her in the parking lot. But suspicion alone meant nothing. Detectives interviewed Daniel 3 days after the disappearance. He welcomed them calmly into his home, offered coffee, answered every question without hesitation, claimed he spent Valentine's night repairing shelves in his garage while listening to a basketball game on the radio. His wife confirmed the story. So did his younger brother. Investigators searched his truck and found absolutely nothing. No blood, no fibers, no weapon. Nothing connected him physically to Emily Carter. Still, experienced detectives sensed something wrong immediately. Daniel Reeves never asked whether Emily had been found alive. Not once. He only asked whether police believed the person responsible was local. The question lingered in investigators' minds for years. Then came March 3rd. 27 days after Emily vanished, a hunter entered abandoned industrial land near the Ashcroft textile mill, nearly 12 miles outside town. The factory had closed years earlier after massive layoffs gutted the local economy. Windows shattered, roof collapsing, graffiti covering concrete walls. The area became notorious for drug activity and illegal dumping. Few people went there willingly. The hunter noticed movement near a frozen drainage ditch. A stray dog digging frantically through mud. At first, he thought it uncovered roadkill. Then he saw fingers. Human fingers. Search teams arrived minutes later and uncovered Emily's body buried beneath plywood sheets and construction plastic wrapped carefully around frozen earth. Even hardened investigators struggled to describe the scene afterward. One deputy vomited beside his patrol car. Another retired 6 months later and never spoke publicly again. The autopsy revealed unimaginable violence. Emily had been restrained before death. Repeated blunt force trauma fractured her ribs. Bleach had been poured across portions of her body in what investigators believed was an attempt to destroy forensic evidence. But the most chilling discovery involved the grave itself. It was methodical, measured, deliberate. Whoever buried Emily took time arranging the scene. Plastic underneath the body, plastic above it. Boards stacked carefully to slow decomposition and conceal odor. Detectives concluded the killer likely had experience with construction, landscaping, or manual labor. Someone comfortable digging in frozen ground. Someone physically strong. Someone organized enough to believe they could outsmart police forever. The town exploded with rage. Hundreds attended Emily's funeral beneath heavy snowfall, while reporters crowded outside the church entrance. Television cameras captured grieving classmates. Parents clutched children tighter. Rumors infected every conversation. Some blamed drifters. Others blamed truck drivers passing through Route 16. But investigators quietly returned again and again to one name, Daniel Reeves, because witnesses placed his truck near Rosie's grill, because his behavior felt rehearsed, because Emily had apparently feared him, and because one detective discovered something deeply unsettling hidden inside older police reports. 5 years earlier, another teenage girl filed a complaint claiming Daniel followed her home repeatedly after work. The report disappeared without charges. Then investigators learned something else. On the morning after Emily vanished, Daniel reportedly brought his truck to a self-service car wash at 5 a.m. during freezing weather. One employee remembered him spraying the interior aggressively for nearly 40 minutes despite temperatures well below zero. Detectives attempted to recover evidence from the vehicle afterward, but found nothing useful. If blood had existed there once, it was gone. Still, there was no direct proof. No DNA, no eyewitness. No murder weapon. The case stalled. Months passed. Leads collapsed. False confessions flooded the sheriff's office from unstable individuals seeking attention. Psychics claimed Emily haunted the woods near the mill. Newspapers printed headlines calling Black Hollow the town living in fear. Businesses closed early after dark. Women traveled in groups. Shotguns appeared behind store counters. Fear changed the town permanently. And then another girl disappeared. 19-year-old Alicia Monroe vanished 40 miles away while driving home from college. Her abandoned vehicle was discovered beside Route 18 with blood smeared across the driver's seat. Investigators immediately feared a serial predator. Panic surged across the county. Helicopters returned. Roadblocks appeared overnight. Detectives compared evidence between both cases, searching desperately for connections. But Alicia Monroe was never found. No body, no arrests, nothing. By 1997, the investigation had become a graveyard of dead leads and exhausted detectives. Sheriff Bennett retired. The FBI scaled back involvement. Evidence boxes disappeared into stored facilities where dust collected over forgotten reports and degraded forensic samples. New crimes replaced old headlines. People stopped expecting answers. Except Emily's mother. Every February, she stood outside the cemetery holding flowers while snow drifted across the gravestones. And every year, reporters asked the same question. Do you believe the killer is still out there? Her answer never changed. He never left. And somewhere inside Black Hollow, hidden behind ordinary smiles and church handshakes and quiet suburban routines, the man investigators suspected most continued living freely for 27 years. Part 2. For 27 years, Daniel Reeves lived like a man who believed he had already escaped judgment. He attended church every Sunday wearing pressed shirts and polished shoes. He coached children during summer baseball seasons. He waved at neighbors while mowing his lawn beneath the same quiet skies that once carried helicopters searching for Emily Carter's body. New families moved into Black Hollow without recognizing his name from old newspaper headlines. Teenagers grew up hearing the story of Emily's murder the same way children hear ghost stories around campfires, distant and unreal, something tragic that happened long ago before they were born. Time softened the edges of the crime for almost everyone except the people who had touched it directly. For them, the horror never ended. Emily's mother kept her daughter's bedroom exactly the same for nearly 15 years. Same posters on the walls. Same school books stacked beside the bed. Same bottle of cheap perfume sitting untouched near the mirror. Friends said she spoke to Emily at night, as if she were still inside the house. Detectives who visited later described the room as frozen in time, preserved like evidence from another life. Her father deteriorated differently. He stopped attending community events, stopped speaking during interviews. By 2003, he barely left the property at all. The murder hollowed him out slowly until silence became permanent. Meanwhile, the investigation rotted. Boxes disappeared. Photographs faded. cassette-recorded witness interviews degraded inside evidence lockers. Black Hollow changed sheriffs 3 times in 2 decades, and each transition buried the Carter case deeper beneath newer crimes. Drug overdoses flooded the county during the early 2000s. Burglaries increased. Meth labs exploded inside abandoned trailers. Resources vanished. Nobody had time for a dead girl from 1994, whose killer left almost no trace behind. But retired Detective Frank Delaney never stopped thinking about Daniel Reeves. Delaney was one of the original investigators who searched Emily's burial site near Ashcroft Mill. The case consumed him for years. According to friends, he became obsessed with tiny details other detectives ignored. The positioning of the plastic sheets, the bleach, the careful burial, the timing. Everything about the murder suggested control, patience, experience. Daniel Reeves fit the profile too perfectly. Working-class male, physically strong, comfortable around tools, knowledge of industrial land near the mill, no history of explosive violence, no criminal record, the exact type of offender experts warned investigators about during the 1990s, organized predators who blend into ordinary life so completely they become invisible. Delaney interviewed Daniel 6 separate times over 4 years. Every conversation ended the same way. Calm answers, steady eye contact, no panic, no anger, nothing. That calmness haunted Delaney more than anything else. Most innocent people become emotional during murder investigations. They show frustration, fear, confusion. Daniel Reeves behaved like a man rehearsing lines inside his head before speaking them aloud. Then there was the funeral. Years after retiring, Delaney rewatched the old VHS recording alone in his living room after drinking too much whiskey one winter night. He later described the experience to another investigator before his death in 2016. According to Delaney, something about Daniel's expression suddenly felt wrong in a way he could never fully explain. Not grief, not sympathy. Relief, as though a problem had finally disappeared. Delaney reportedly called the sheriff's office at nearly 2 in the morning afterward and left a voicemail saying only one sentence: "You need to look at Reeves again." But by then there was nothing left to investigate, or so everyone believed. In 2021, advances in forensic genealogy began reopening cold cases nationwide with terrifying success. Murderers who had escaped justice for 30 or 40 years suddenly found themselves exposed by microscopic DNA fragments impossible to analyze during earlier decades. Detectives solved cases from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Men who once believed time protected them were dragged from retirement homes into interrogation rooms. Black Hollow's new sheriff, Laura Bennett, watched those stories closely. 42 years old, former state investigator, ruthless reputation. Bennett grew up 20 miles from Black Hollow and remembered hearing Emily Carter's name constantly during childhood. She inherited the cold case file shortly after taking office and immediately noticed how disastrously the original investigation had been handled. Critical evidence had never been retested. Witness statements contradicted each other. Several items recovered near Emily's body remained sealed for decades because technology at the time couldn't extract usable DNA. Bennett reopened everything. She assembled a small team and began rebuilding the timeline from scratch. Detectives interviewed surviving witnesses again. Some refused to talk. Others finally admitted details they hid for years because they feared retaliation or public humiliation back in the 90s. One former waitress from Rosie's Grill revealed something shocking. A week before Emily disappeared, she allegedly told co-workers Daniel Reeves had been calling the diner asking whether she was working certain shifts. Another witness remembered Emily becoming visibly uncomfortable whenever Daniel entered the restaurant. Then came a detail buried deep inside forgotten Sheriff Department notes. 3 days after the funeral, Daniel Reeves unexpectedly shaved his beard after wearing facial hair continuously for nearly 10 years. Investigators at the time dismissed it as meaningless. Bennett did not. Behavioral analysts assisting the new investigation suggested sudden appearance changes following violent crimes often reflected psychological stress responses, especially among organized offenders attempting to regain emotional control. Separately, the clue meant little. Combined with everything else, it deepened suspicion. Still, suspicion could not arrest anyone. The forensic breakthrough arrived in October. Inside an old evidence container marked simply victim clothing, analysts discovered fibers from Emily's winter jacket, preserved beneath degraded packaging materials. Modern testing identified a partial male DNA profile embedded near the inside collar area, likely transferred during close physical contact. In 1994, the sample was too damaged for analysis. In 2021, technology finally caught up. The profile was incomplete, but it was enough. Investigators uploaded the sequence into a genealogical database designed to identify family relationships through shared ancestry markers. The process resembled building an invisible family tree from blood. 72 hours later, the lab contacted Bennett directly. The DNA likely belonged to someone connected to the Reeves family line. Not conclusive, not courtroom proof, but enough to justify surveillance. And suddenly, after 27 years, Daniel Reeves found himself watched again. Unmarked vehicles appeared near his workplace. Detectives tracked his routines quietly. They studied financial records, property ownership, internet history, phone metadata, everything. Neighbors noticed unfamiliar cars parked along the street late at night. Rumors spread quickly through Black Hollow after investigators reopened the case publicly. Old fear resurfaced almost instantly. Then another terrifying possibility emerged. Detectives began comparing unsolved disappearances from neighboring counties during the 90s. Patterns surfaced immediately. Young women, late-night disappearances, vehicles abandoned near highways, minimal forensic evidence. At least 4 cases now appeared potentially connected. One involved Alicia Monroe, the 19-year-old college student who vanished 6 months after Emily Carter's murder. Another involved a gas station clerk missing since 1998, whose body was never recovered. The similarities disturbed investigators deeply. If Daniel Reeves was responsible, Emily may never have been his only victim. Bennett needed stronger evidence. DNA from a crime scene alone would not guarantee conviction, because defense attorneys could argue innocent transfer. Daniel knew Emily. He visited the diner regularly. The sample placed him near her, not necessarily at the murder. Investigators required a direct comparison sample. But Daniel Reeves refused voluntary DNA testing immediately after being approached. That refusal electrified the sheriff's department. Innocent people refused testing too. Lawyers advised it constantly. Yet Bennett noticed something unsettling during the interaction. Detectives described Daniel becoming pale the moment DNA was mentioned. Not angry, not defensive, afraid. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, investigators believed pressure was cracking the mask. Surveillance intensified. And that was when Daniel Reeves started making mistakes. He began driving late at night without explanation. He visited isolated roads outside Black Hollow repeatedly. He burned trash barrels behind his property after midnight, despite local restrictions. One detective observed him sitting alone inside his parked truck near Ashcroft Mill for nearly 40 minutes without moving, the same mill where Emily's body had been buried. Bennett requested covert trash recovery. Investigators searched discarded cigarette butts, soda cans, napkins, anything carrying biological material. Finally, on November 11th, detectives obtained a usable DNA sample from a plastic coffee cup Daniel threw away outside a convenience store. The lab comparison took less than 12 hours. The partial DNA profile recovered from Emily Carter's jacket matched Daniel Reeves with overwhelming probability. After 27 years, the impossible finally became real. But Bennett refused immediate arrest. She wanted a confession, because she suspected something far worse than a single murder. Detectives prepared hidden recording devices. Surveillance teams monitored Daniel around the clock, waiting for psychological collapse. Experts believe offenders like Reeves often unravel once they realize science has cornered them. Some flee, some confess, some become dangerous. Then, on the night of November 14th, investigators watched Daniel Reeves drive toward the abandoned Ashcroft Mill again. And this time he wasn't alone. Part 3. Rain hammered the windshield hard enough to blur the world into streaks of black and silver as Detective Laura Bennett sat inside an unmarked vehicle half a mile from Ashcroft Mill watching Daniel Reeves disappear through the rusted entrance gate for the third time that month. The abandoned factory stood like a corpse against the November sky. Hollow windows staring across dead industrial land, where weeds pushed through cracked concrete and twisted metal fences rattled in the wind. Most people avoided the property entirely after dark. Drug addicts used parts of the structure occasionally, but locals whispered about worse things. Screams heard at night, strange lights moving behind shattered windows. Stories about Emily Carter's ghost wandering the drainage ditch where hunters found her body buried beneath frozen mud 27 years earlier. Fear changes places. It stains them, and Ashcroft Mill had been poisoned by fear for decades. But Daniel Reeves kept returning there. At 9:42 p.m., detectives observed another vehicle pull slowly to the factory entrance behind him. A woman, middle-aged, dark SUV. Investigators zoomed cameras toward the windshield, trying to identify her through the rain. Bennett felt her pulse spike when the woman stepped out beneath a flickering security light near the loading dock. Karen Reeves, Daniel's wife. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Rain echoed across the empty factory yard, while surveillance teams watched through fog lenses from multiple positions surrounding the property. Then Daniel approached the passenger side of Karen's SUV, carrying something long wrapped inside a blue tarp. Investigators immediately feared he was moving evidence. Bennett ordered units closer. But before officers could advance, Karen grabbed Daniel's arm violently and shoved him backward. Even from a distance, detectives could see panic exploding between them. Daniel shouted something unintelligible over the storm. Karen screamed back louder. Then suddenly she slapped him across the face hard enough to stagger him sideways. Bennett made the decision instantly. Move in. Police vehicles surged forward through mud and standing water, headlights cutting across the ruined factory grounds while detectives rushed toward the couple shouting commands. Daniel froze. Karen collapsed beside her SUV, sobbing uncontrollably. Officers restrained Daniel against the hood of his truck, while Bennett pulled Karen aside beneath the loading dock overhang away from cameras and rain. The first words out of Karen Reeves' mouth changed the entire investigation. He told me she wouldn't stop screaming. Detective Bennett stared at her silently. Karen shook so violently she could barely breathe. He told me it was an accident, she whispered. For 27 years, Karen Reeves carried a secret she never fully understood until DNA technology shattered the illusion protecting her husband. According to her statement later that night, Daniel confessed pieces of the murder gradually over the years whenever he drank heavily or spiraled into panic attacks after news coverage about cold cases resurfaced on television. Never complete details. Never enough for Karen to go directly to police. Just fragments. A girl in the truck. A fight. Screaming. Bleach. The factory. At first, Karen believed Daniel struck someone accidentally during an argument and covered up out of fear. She convinced herself the truth couldn't possibly be as monstrous as it sounded. They had children together. A mortgage. 27 years of marriage. Accepting reality meant admitting she slept beside a predator nearly every night since 1994. Then detectives reopened the case. Daniel changed immediately. Stopped sleeping. Started drinking. Obsessed over news reports about DNA advancements and cold case arrests. Karen caught him burning old clothing behind the house after midnight. One evening, she discovered him sitting alone in the garage staring at newspaper clippings about Emily Carter spread across the workbench floor. That was when he finally admitted the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Karen told investigators Daniel claimed Emily got into his truck voluntarily after work because they knew each other from the diner. He insisted they argued after she threatened to expose him for harassing her. According to Daniel, he lost control when she tried escaping the vehicle near Ashcroft Mill. Karen didn't believe the story completely. Neither did detectives. Too many details suggested planning, organization, experience. But before investigators could push deeper into the interrogation, another revelation struck the room like lightning. Karen recognized Alicia Monroe's name immediately, the missing college student from 1994. And according to her, Daniel reacted violently every time that case appeared on television. Detective Bennett felt cold, because until that moment, investigators still lacked proof linking Daniel Reeves to anyone besides Emily Carter. Now the possibility of multiple victims became terrifyingly real. Daniel was transported to Black Hollow Sheriff's Department shortly after midnight. The arrest itself spread across town within hours. Residents woke to flashing news alerts and police scanners exploding online. By sunrise, television vans crowded outside the sheriff's office while stunned neighbors stood wrapped in coats, staring at Daniel Reeves being escorted through side entrances in handcuffs. Most people reacted with disbelief. Church members defended him publicly. Former co-workers called the accusations impossible. Parents whose children Daniel coached during baseball seasons appeared on camera crying. He's a good man. He would never hurt anybody. We've known him for years. But investigators had heard those words before in other cases involving organized predators. The most dangerous offenders often survive by mastering normalcy. They hide behind routines, smiles, community trust. The mask becomes more convincing than reality itself. Inside Interrogation Room 3, Daniel Reeves remained disturbingly calm. Detectives expected panic after Karen's statement. Instead, Daniel sat perfectly still beneath fluorescent lights with his hands folded neatly on the table, exactly the same way he stood during Emily Carter's funeral nearly 3 decades earlier. No visible fear. No shocking. No anger. Bennett entered the room carrying old crime scene photographs and watched his eyes carefully. Nothing. No reaction whatsoever. She placed a DNA report directly in front of him. Still nothing. Finally she spoke. Your wife told us everything. Daniel leaned back slowly in the chair. Then he smiled. Not large, not dramatic, just enough to freeze the room. According to transcripts later leaked online, Daniel's next sentence horrified investigators more than any confession could have. You still don't know everything. Silence swallowed the room. Bennett asked what he meant. Daniel stared directly at her for nearly 10 seconds before answering. You think Emily was the first one. Interrogation footage would later become infamous among law enforcement professionals because of how emotionally detached Daniel appeared while discussing violence. Experts reviewing the tapes described classic psychopathic indicators: shallow affect, controlled speech patterns, absence of guilt, manipulative pauses designed to destabilize investigators psychologically. But Daniel refused direct confession. Every statement danced around the truth without fully crossing legal lines. He admitted meeting Emily, admitted driving her toward Ashcroft Mill, admitted things got out of control. Yet each time Bennett pushed toward murder, Daniel retreated behind ambiguity. She wouldn't calm down. I didn't mean for things to happen that way. You don't understand how loud she got. Then at 3:14 a.m., Bennett placed Alicia Monroe's photograph on the table. For the first time during the interrogation, Daniel blinked hard. Tiny reaction. Almost invisible. But enough. Bennett saw it immediately. You know her, she said quietly. Daniel stared at the photograph for several seconds too long. Then came another smile. Different this time. Sadder somehow. She was supposed to leave town. Bennett's blood turned to ice. Investigators pressed aggressively afterward, but Daniel shut down completely once attorneys arrived. The interrogation ended without full confession. Still, prosecutors believe the DNA evidence combined with Karen's testimony created a strong enough case for murder charges. Yet Bennett remained obsessed with one question. How many victims were there really? Because during the final minutes before attorneys terminated questioning, Daniel muttered something almost too softly for microphones to capture. There are places you never searched. The statement triggered immediate emergency meetings between county investigators and state police. Detectives reopened missing person files spanning nearly 15 years across surrounding regions. Geographic profilers studied Daniel's work history, travel patterns, hunting routes, fishing licenses, construction jobs, and property access records. The emerging pattern terrified them. Daniel Reeves spent years driving across isolated industrial corridors throughout 3 counties delivering hardware supplies for work, meaning he knew remote roads, abandoned structures, places bodies could disappear forever. Search warrants executed on Daniel's property uncovered disturbing evidence almost immediately. Detectives recovered old newspaper clippings about missing women hidden beneath insulation inside the garage ceiling. Investigators found women's jewelry sealed inside toolboxes. Several items potentially matched unresolved disappearance cases from neighboring towns. Then forensic teams discovered something buried behind the Reeves property shed. Bone fragments. Human bone fragments. News of the discovery detonated across national media within hours. Satellite trucks lined Black Hollow streets. True crime reporters flooded restaurants and gas stations, interviewing terrified residents. The story transformed overnight from local cold case into potential serial murder investigation. And through all of it, Daniel Reeves remained expressionless, even during arraignment, even while cameras flashed inches from his face. Emily Carter's mother attended a hearing wearing the same silver cross necklace she carried since her daughter disappeared. Witnesses described the courtroom atmosphere as suffocating. Nobody spoke while Daniel entered. Nobody moved. Then, according to multiple people seated near the front, Daniel briefly turned his head toward Emily's mother before sitting down, and smiled again. The gesture shattered her completely. She collapsed crying before deputies helped escort her from the courtroom. Outside, reporters screamed questions while crowds gathered behind barricades demanding answers the town waited 27 years to hear. How many girls died? Where were the bodies? Why did he do it? But the most frightening question remained unanswered, because investigators still hadn't searched everything. And somewhere beyond a frozen wood surrounding Black Hollow, hidden beneath decades of silence and dirt and forgotten roads, detectives fear more victims were still waiting to be found. Part 4. The excavation began before sunrise beneath floodlights, so bright they turned the frozen woods behind Daniel Reeves' property into something resembling a war zone. State police sealed off nearly 3 acres of land using yellow tape and portable fencing, while forensic anthropologists walked slowly across the muddy ground carrying metal probes and evidence markers. News helicopters circled overhead from the moment the first shovels hit the earth. By then, the entire country knew Black Hollow's name. What started as a 27-year-old cold case had transformed into a nightmare unfolding live on television, and every passing hour deepened suspicion that investigators were standing on top of something far worse than a single murder. Detective Laura Bennett barely slept during those first days after Daniel's arrest. She moved between command tents, excavation sites, interrogation rooms, and press conferences, surviving almost entirely on coffee and adrenaline, while new leads exploded faster than investigators could process them. Calls flooded the sheriff's office from neighboring counties reporting unsolved disappearances dating back decades. Families of missing women begged detectives to compare evidence. Former classmates, co-workers, ex-girlfriends, and terrified strangers all claimed they remembered disturbing encounters with Daniel Reeves. Some stories were exaggerated. Some were impossible to verify. But enough details aligned to make experienced investigators deeply uneasy. Women remembered him watching them, following them, appearing unexpectedly outside workplaces late at night. One former waitress from another county claimed Daniel once grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise after she rejected him in a parking lot during the late 90s. She never reported it because he apologized afterward and blamed alcohol. Another woman described waking up to find his truck parked outside her apartment at 3 a.m. without explanation. Individually, the incidents sounded small. Together, they formed a pattern. Meanwhile, forensic teams searching Daniel's property uncovered something even more horrifying. Near the rear tree line behind the shed, cadaver dogs repeatedly alerted investigators to disturbed earth buried beneath layers of old construction debris. Excavation crews worked carefully for hours before uncovering scraps of deteriorated fabric nearly 6 feet underground. Then came the smell. Veteran officers recognized it immediately. Human decomposition. The recovery process stopped the entire site cold. Investigators switched from evidence excavation to body recovery protocol, while television helicopters hovered overhead broadcasting every movement live across national news networks. Reporters speculated endlessly from behind police barricades, while residents gathered silently along nearby roads, staring toward the woods where search teams moved beneath floodlights. At 6:43 p.m., forensic specialists uncovered partial skeletal remains wrapped inside rotted plastic sheeting. Female, young adult, no immediate identification. Detective Bennett watched the recovery from several yards away while freezing rain hammered the evidence tents overhead. One thought kept repeating inside her mind. How many? Because the burial method mirrored Emily Carter almost exactly. Plastic underneath the body, plastic above it. Deliberate concealment, control, the same organized precision. Daniel Reeves refused to speak during this phase of the investigation. Attorneys blocked further interrogation attempts while prosecutors prepared formal murder charges tied directly to Emily Carter's DNA evidence. Still, investigators monitored him constantly inside county jail after behavioral experts warned he might attempt suicide if additional victims surfaced publicly. Instead, Daniel remained calm. Too calm. Correctional officers later described him as eerily polite. He read newspapers quietly in his cell, ate normally, slept normally. Sometimes he smiled while watching television coverage about the excavation site. One guard claimed Daniel actually laughed softly during a news segment discussing search teams digging behind his property. That detail spread quickly among investigators. Some stopped believing they were dealing with a normal predator entirely. Then came the discovery that shattered Black Hollow forever. 3 days into the excavation, search teams uncovered a second burial site 40 yards from the first. This one smaller, shallower, and according to forensic anthropologists, significantly older. The remains belonged to a teenage girl between 16 and 19 years old. No identification, no clothing intact. But wrapped around one wrist, investigators discovered a silver bracelet engraved with the initials AM. Alicia Monroe, the missing college student who vanished 6 months after Emily Carter in 1994. After 27 years, investigators finally found her, buried behind Daniel Reeves' home the entire time. The revelation detonated across the country like a bomb. National media outlets interrupted programming for breaking coverage, while true crime forums crashed under massive traffic. Outside Black Hollow Sheriff's Department, crowds gathered carrying candles and signs demanding answers. Some residents cried openly during interviews after learning a serial predator may have lived among them for decades. Others reacted with rage. Because Daniel Reeves had not hidden in isolation, he attended barbecues, church events, children's birthday parties. He stood beside grieving families during memorial services for missing women, while secretly knowing exactly where at least 2 bodies were buried. That betrayal poisoned the town deeper than the murders themselves. People began re-examining every interaction they ever had with him. Neighbors remembered strange sounds at night. Former co-workers recalled unexplained injuries on his hands after disappearances occurred. Parents suddenly questioned whether their daughters had ever been alone with him during baseball practices or church trips. Fear spread backward through memory, infecting the past itself. And investigators still weren't finished digging. Search teams expanded the excavation perimeter immediately after Alicia Monroe's identification. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the entire property along with nearby Woodland Daniel, frequently visited for hunting trips. Detectives combed through decades of employment records identifying isolated locations where Daniel worked temporarily across 3 counties. Then another clue emerged from inside his garage. Behind shelves containing paint cans and rusted hardware tools, investigators discovered hidden compartments built directly into the wall insulation. Inside, they found dozens of items carefully preserved inside sealed containers. Photographs, jewelry, driver's licenses, hair ribbons, women's clothing, trophies. The collection horrified even experienced homicide detectives because it revealed something undeniable about Daniel Reeves. Emily Carter was never an accident. Alicia Monroe was never accidental either. Organized offenders often keep souvenirs from victims as psychological reminders, allowing them to relive crimes privately for years afterward. And Daniel kept everything. One photograph in particular disturbed investigators more than the rest. A blurry Polaroid showing an unidentified young woman sitting inside a truck, crying while her hands appeared restrained behind her back. The image quality was poor, her face partially obscured, but analysts believed she was alive when the photo was taken. No one recognized her, which meant there could be more victims still missing. By now, federal agencies joined the investigation fully. Behavioral profilers from Quantico arrived in Black Hollow, alongside forensic specialists and geographic analysts. They constructed timelines mapping Daniel's movements against unsolved disappearances stretching back nearly 15 years. The overlap became impossible to ignore. At least 7 missing women, now potentially connected to him, possibly more. Yet without bodies or DNA, prosecutors remain cautious publicly. Emily Carter's murder case alone already guaranteed national attention and likely life imprisonment, but Bennett refused to stop searching. She became consumed by the possibility that families across multiple states still had no idea their daughters were dead. Then the jailhouse incident happened. On the 8th night after his arrest, correctional officers responded to violent screaming inside Daniel Reeves' cell shortly after 2 a.m. guards found him collapsed on the floor hyperventilating and clawing at his own throat while shouting incoherently about the girl in the woods. Medical staff initially suspected cardiac distress until Daniel suddenly grabbed one officer's uniform and whispered something that would later appear in confidential reports leaked to journalists months afterward. She keeps standing beside the bed. The statement spread rapidly through the jail. Soon guards refused solitary assignments near Daniel's cell after dark. Some claimed they heard him talking to invisible people late at night. Others described sudden personality shifts where Daniel alternated between emotionless silence and uncontrollable panic attacks. Behavioral experts suggested the psychological pressure of exposure finally fractured whatever emotional compartmentalization allowed him to function normally for decades. But Detective Bennett believed something else terrified him more. Discovery. Not punishment. Discovery. Because investigators were getting closer to something he desperately wanted hidden. 3 days later, Bennett received confirmation from forensic analysts examining one of the recovered trophy items, a necklace connected through DNA traces to another unsolved disappearance from 1991 involving a 17-year-old named Rachel Mercer, who vanished while hitchhiking 70 miles from Black Hollow. That changed everything. Rachel disappeared 3 years before Emily Carter, meaning Daniel Reeves may have been killing long before investigators ever suspected him. And if Rachel Mercer was truly connected to him, then his victim count could extend far beyond anything the town imagined. The case spiraled into full-scale serial homicide investigation overnight. Reporters camped outside the sheriff's office 24 hours a day. National anchors called Black Hollow America's buried nightmare. Former FBI profilers appeared on television debating whether Daniel Reeves represented one of the most successful unidentified serial predators in modern state history. Still, the most chilling detail remained hidden inside evidence photographs almost nobody outside the investigation had seen. Because forensic teams examining Alicia Monroe's burial site discovered markings carved into the plywood covering her grave. Tiny marks, carefully measured, vertical lines grouped together. At first, investigators assumed construction measurements. Then someone counted them. There were 7 marks, 7 victims. And detectives suddenly realized the number of bodies recovered might not even be close to the real total. Part 5. The 7th mark carved into plywood changed the atmosphere of the investigation completely, because until that moment detectives still clung to the possibility that Daniel Reeves was simply a violent predator who escalated over time, a man responsible for 2 or 3 murders hidden behind decades of normal suburban life. But 7 marks meant planning, counting, memory, and perhaps most disturbing of all, pride. Someone had carved those lines deliberately. Someone wanted to remember the number. And when forensic analysts confirmed the markings were created before burial rather than afterward through weather damage, the realization hit investigators with suffocating force. Daniel Reeves may have been documenting his victims like trophies long before anyone knew his name. By December, Black Hollow no longer resembled a normal town. Satellite trucks crowded every major intersection. National reporters occupied motel rooms for miles around. Locals avoided restaurants because cameras waited everywhere, hunting reactions from frightened residents. Businesses near the sheriff's department boarded windows after protesters gathered nightly carrying photographs of missing women while shouting for Daniel Reeves to reveal burial locations. The pressure on investigators became enormous. Families across multiple states demanded answers. Every unsolved disappearance suddenly pointed toward Black Hollow. And still Daniel said almost nothing. Detective Laura Bennett visited him repeatedly inside county jail, hoping exhaustion or ego would finally crack his silence. Instead, she encountered something worse each time. Calmness returning slowly beneath the fractures. The panic attack stopped. The hallucination claim stopped. Daniel adapted to confinement with disturbing ease. He read newspapers, exercised, slept peacefully. It was as if once the secret exploded into public view, some internal burden disappeared. During one interview, Bennett placed photographs of the recovered trophies across the metal table between them. Jewelry, hair ribbons, driver's licenses, the Polaroid of the crying, unidentified woman. Daniel examined each item without visible emotion until he reached the photograph. Then he smiled faintly again. "There are things you can't prove," he said quietly. Bennett ignored the bait. "Who is she?" Daniel leaned back slowly. "She talked too much." The sentence chilled everyone inside the room because he delivered it with the same casual tone someone might use discussing weather. No anger, no excitement, just detached memory. Bennett pushed harder. "Did you kill her?" Daniel looked directly into the interrogation camera before answering. "You keep asking the wrong question." Then he refused further discussion. Outside the jail, forensic teams expanded searches into abandoned industrial land Daniel visited repeatedly throughout the 90s. Cadaver dogs swept old trucking routes. Divers searched flooded quarry pits. Investigators excavated hunting camps hidden deep in state forest areas. Every location carried the same unbearable possibility. Another grave waiting beneath dirt untouched for decades. Then came the discovery near Hollow Creek. A retired fisherman contacted authorities after seeing television coverage about Daniel Reeves. He remembered something strange from the summer of 1998 while camping near an isolated creek 20 miles outside town. According to his statement, he saw a man matching Daniel's description unloading heavy plastic wrap bundles from a truck after midnight near an abandoned boat launch. At the time, he assumed illegal dumping and ignored it. Now he wasn't so sure. Search teams arrived 2 days later. The water temperature hovered just above freezing, while divers moved slowly through thick black mud beneath dead trees and broken concrete remains from an old bridge collapse. Visibility underwater was almost zero. Hours passed without results. Then one diver surfaced screaming for backup. They found bones. Human bones tangled beneath rusted shopping carts and industrial debris at the bottom of the creek. The recovery operation lasted 14 hours. When forensic anthropologists finally assembled the remains inside a temporary lab, the conclusion stunned investigators again. Female, approximately early 20s. Evidence of blunt force trauma. Buried underwater intentionally using cinder blocks and wire. And wrapped around the skeleton's left wrist remained fragments of blue fabric, matching the uniform color once used by a gas station chain connected to another disappearance from 1998. Megan Lawson, missing for 23 years. The moment her name entered the investigation publicly, panic spread through surrounding counties like wildfire. Families who spent decades believing loved ones simply vanished suddenly feared they were all connected to the same predator hiding in plain sight. Detectives reopened dozens of dormant files. State databases overflowed with comparison requests. Analysts built massive maps tracking Daniel's known travel patterns against unsolved disappearances from 1988 through 2002. The overlap became horrifying. At least 11 potential victims, possibly more. And every new discovery deepened the nightmare surrounding Daniel Reeves because of how ordinary he appeared throughout all of it. Investigators interviewed former co-workers who described him as quiet but reliable. Church members remembered him helping organize charity drives for missing children. One woman nearly collapsed during a televised interview after learning Daniel once volunteered during searches for Alicia Monroe while her body decomposed behind his own house. That detail haunted the public more than almost anything else. The killer searched for his own victim. He carried flashlights beside grieving volunteers. He comforted families. He attended funerals. He smiled. Meanwhile, forensic specialists examining Daniel's garage uncovered additional evidence hidden beneath layers of insulation and concrete. Behind a false wall, investigators discover handwritten notebooks sealed inside waterproof containers. The journals contain dates, locations, weather conditions, and cryptic descriptions investigators immediately believe corresponded to attacks. Some entries were short. She cried the entire drive. Others were worse. She stopped moving before midnight, but one sentence repeated constantly throughout the notebooks. They never see me. Behavioral analysts consider the writings extremely significant because they revealed the psychological core driving Daniel Reeves for years. Power through invisibility, control through normalcy. Experts believed he viewed himself almost like a ghost moving through society untouched by suspicion, while everyone focused on more obvious threats. And for nearly 3 decades, he was right. Detective Bennett spent nights reading every recovered page alone inside the command center, while storms rattled the windows outside. One entry in particular kept returning to her mind because it referenced something investigators had never released publicly. Snow makes everything quieter. Emily Carter disappeared during a blizzard. That meant Daniel absolutely wrote the journals. The notebooks also contained references to the woods beyond Route 9 and the old place near the tracks, locations investigators hadn't searched yet. Search warrants expanded immediately. Federal resources flooded into Black Hollow. Excavation crews move around the clock despite freezing temperatures. Then came another body, this time buried near abandoned railroad property 60 miles outside town. The victim had been missing since 1992. 16-year-old Rachel Mercer, the same girl connected earlier through DNA traces on a recovered necklace hidden inside Daniel's garage. Forensic examination revealed horrifying similarities to Emily Carter and Alicia Monroe. Plastic sheeting, blunt force trauma, evidence of restraint. The pattern now became undeniable. Daniel Reeves was not merely a serial killer. He was methodical, experienced, practiced. The timeline suggested he murdered for over a decade without detection. National media exploded after Rachel Mercer's identification. Experts appeared nightly on television, comparing Daniel to some of the most notorious predators in American history. Yet inside Black Hollow, the emotional damage felt more personal than sensational. Residents stopped trusting each other. Church attendance collapsed. Parents questioned memories once considered harmless. Women revisited strange encounters from years earlier, wondering how close they came to disappearing themselves. Then Karen Reeves finally broke publicly. Until that point, she avoided cameras entirely while living under police protection after Daniel's arrest. But after Rachel Mercer's body was identified, Karen requested a televised interview through her attorney. The broadcast shattered viewers nationwide. Karen appeared pale and exhausted beneath studio lights, gripping tissues with trembling hands while tears streamed constantly down her face. She described years of denial, fear, manipulation. According to Karen, Daniel controlled every aspect of their home life, quietly rather than violently. He monitored schedules, isolated her socially, exploded emotionally whenever she questioned his whereabouts during late-night drives. Then she revealed something investigators never knew. In 2001, Karen discovered muddy women's shoes hidden beneath a workbench in the garage. Daniel told her they belonged to a homeless woman he helped after her car broke down. Weeks later, she saw news coverage about a missing waitress from another county. The waitress wore similar shoes. Karen confronted him once. Only once. According to her, Daniel stared silently for nearly a minute before answering. "If you ever accuse me again, nobody will find you either." The studio fell silent after that sentence. Across the country, millions watched the interview in horror, while investigators reopened the 2001 waitress disappearance immediately. But Karen's final statement disturbed Detective Bennett most, because before the interview ended, Karen revealed Daniel often talked in his sleep after drinking heavily, usually nonsense, fragments, but one phrase returned constantly through the years. "She's still in the woods." Not they, she, singular, meaning investigators feared one victim remained undiscovered somewhere beyond every grave already uncovered. And deep inside the evidence notebooks recovered from Daniel's hidden wall compartment, analysts found one final entry written shakily across the page unlike anything else in the collection. No date, No location. Only 6 words. She wasn't supposed to survive. Part 6. The sentence spread through the investigation like poison. She wasn't supposed to survive. 6 words scribbled unevenly across the final page of Daniel Reeves' hidden notebook. 6 words that transformed the case again because until that moment investigators believed they were hunting graves, bodies, evidence of the dead. But those words suggested something entirely different. A survivor. Someone who escaped. Someone who might still be alive somewhere carrying memories too horrifying to speak aloud. Detective Laura Bennett read the sentence over and over beneath the fluorescent lights of Command Center while cold rain hammered against the windows outside. Around her, maps covered entire walls now. Red pins marked disappearances stretching across 3 counties and nearly 15 years. Search teams rotated 24 hours a day through forests, creeks, abandoned industrial sites, and forgotten roads Daniel Reeves traveled during his years delivering hardware supplies. Reporters called the sheriff's office every hour, demanding updates. Families of missing women crowded outside, holding photographs against their chests. Nobody slept anymore. And through all of it, that sentence refused to leave Bennett's mind. She wasn't supposed to survive. Investigators began combing through every unsolved assault, abduction attempt, and suspicious roadside incident connected geographically to Daniel Reeves between 1988 and 2005. Thousands of pages, hundreds of names. Most led nowhere. False alarms. Dead ends. But then analysts uncovered an old police report buried inside county archives from November 1996 involving a 20-year-old woman named Leah Collins. The report was almost forgotten because Leah never identified her attacker clearly. At 2:13 a.m. on November 18, 1996, Leah was discovered wandering barefoot along Route 9 nearly 30 miles outside Black Hollow, hypothermic, disoriented, covered in mud and blood. According to responding officers, she kept repeating the same sentence through uncontrollable sobbing. He was going to bury me. At the time, investigators believed Leah survived a random assault by an unknown drifter. She described a man in a truck attacking her after offering help when her vehicle broke down during heavy rain. She escaped after striking him with a tire iron inside the woods near an abandoned railroad crossing. No suspect was ever identified. The case went cold within weeks. Until now, because Route 9 appeared repeatedly inside Daniel Reeves' notebooks. And one entry dated vaguely around late 1996 contained a chilling sentence investigators initially overlooked. She fought harder than the others. Detective Bennett immediately ordered Leah Collins located. The problem was nobody knew where she lived anymore. After the assault in 1996, Leah vanished almost completely from public records. No marriage license, no updated address, no employment history beyond temporary jobs scattered across different states. Trauma specialists assisting the investigation suggested survivors of extreme violence often disappear intentionally to escape memories tied to the attack. Federal analysts finally tracked her through sealed medical documentation to a small coastal town in Oregon nearly 2,000 miles away. When investigators contacted her by phone, she hung up immediately. They tried again. Again, she refused. Finally, Bennett flew there personally. The interview took place inside a small rented beach house under gray skies, while waves crashed violently beyond the windows. Leah Collins looked older than her age. Exhaustion carved permanently into her face. She barely made eye contact when Bennett introduced herself. For several minutes, she said nothing at all. Then Bennett placed Daniel Reeves' photograph on the table. Leah stopped breathing. Her hands began shaking uncontrollably. And after nearly 30 years of silence, she whispered one word, him. According to Leah's testimony, she met Daniel Reeves at a gas station late one rainy night after a car overheated outside Black Hollow. Daniel appeared friendly, helpful, calm. He offered tools and claimed he worked nearby. When her engine failed completely, he offered her a ride toward the nearest service station. Instead, he drove into the woods. Leah described the attack in fragments between panic attacks, severe enough investigators paused the interview repeatedly. Daniel restrained her. Duct tape, rope, a shovel already inside the truck bed before she entered the vehicle. That detail horrified Bennett immediately because it suggested preparation, not impulse. Leah remembered him speaking strangely during the assault, almost conversational, as though discussing ordinary tasks. At one point, he reportedly told her, "Nobody notices girls like you disappear." Then something went wrong. While Daniel dragged her through muddy ground near the railroad crossing, Leah managed to grab a tire iron from the truck bed and strike him across the side of the face hard enough to stagger him backward. She ran blindly into the woods while he chased her, screaming through darkness and rain. But he never caught her. She escaped. Barely. And before disappearing into isolation for the next 25 years, Leah gave investigators one final detail that detonated inside Bennett's mind like a gunshot. Daniel had a scar near his jawline the night he attacked her. A scar matching an unexplained injury several co-workers noticed on Daniel Reeves shortly after November 1996. Suddenly, the notebooks made terrifying sense. She wasn't supposed to survive. Leah Collins was never intended to escape. And if Daniel failed once, investigators wondered how many times he came close before. When news leaked that a living survivor identified Daniel publicly, the national reaction became explosive. Media outlets labeled Leah the woman who escaped the Black Hollow killer. Talk shows dissected every detail of her account. Former profilers described the attack as classic organized predator behavior. Manipulation first, violence second, burial preparation already in place before the assault even began. But one detail disturbed experts more than anything else: the shovel, because it meant Daniel likely planned murders long before selecting victims. Meanwhile, back in Black Hollow, excavation teams uncovered another burial site near abandoned railroad property connected to Rachel Mercer. This time the remains belonged to a woman in her mid-20s, missing since 2001, the waitress Karen Reeves unknowingly referenced during her televised interview. Samantha Pike. Her body showed evidence of restraint identical to previous victims. The count now reached 5 confirmed murders. Yet the carved tally marks suggested 7. Investigators feared 2 victims remained hidden somewhere beyond every search already conducted. Pressure mounted rapidly inside the sheriff's department. Federal agencies demanded coordinated strategy meetings, while prosecutors prepared death penalty arguments tied to multiple homicide counts. But Bennett cared less about courtroom victory than understanding the full scope of Daniel Reeves' violence, because his behavior inside jail kept growing stranger. Correctional officers reported Daniel waking nightly around exactly 3:17 a.m., standing motionless beside a cell door whispering names investigators didn't recognize. Sometimes he laughed softly afterward. Other nights, he pounded his head against the wall hard enough to bleed. Then came the drawing. During routine inspection, guards discovered Daniel sketching maps repeatedly on notebook paper provided by attorneys. Most appeared chaotic and meaningless until analysts noticed recurring landmarks: a bridge, train tracks, water, the same symbols over and over. Detective Bennett studied the sketches for hours before recognizing something chilling. One drawing resembled the abandoned Blackwater flood channel 15 miles outside town, a place mostly forgotten after severe storm damage during the 80s redirected local traffic routes. Search teams deployed immediately. The flood channel stretched nearly 2 miles beneath collapsed concrete barriers and overgrown brush. Water pooled thick and black beneath rusted drainage pipes, while search dogs moved nervously along the banks. Divers entered first. 40 minutes later, they found clothing, women's clothing, then skeletal remains buried beneath debris near the drainage wall. The victim's identity took longer this time because decomposition and flood damage destroyed most forensic evidence. But dental records eventually confirmed investigators' fears. Nicole Barrett, missing since 1989, 6 years before Emily Carter, meaning Daniel Reeves may have been killing for over 30 years. The discovery devastated Black Hollow beyond repair. Residents stopped referring to him as a murderer or even a serial killer. New headlines called him the ghost predator, the burial killer, the man who hid among us. Parents who once trusted him with their children now questioned every memory connected to him. Former church members removed photographs containing Daniel from family albums. His house became a shrine of rage covered in graffiti, candles, missing person posters, and death threats spray painted across the garage doors. Still, the most terrifying revelation arrived quietly through forensic analysis rather than excavation. Investigators examining old evidence from Emily Carter's murder discovered traces of another woman's DNA mixed beneath the plastic wrapping surrounding her body. Not Emily, not Daniel, another unidentified female, which meant there was likely someone else present during at least one burial. Someone who either witnessed the aftermath or helped him. And suddenly Detective Bennett faced the possibility that Daniel Reeves may never have acted entirely alone. Part 7. The possibility of a second person shattered the investigation into something even darker, because until that moment the horror surrounding Daniel Reeves depended on one unbearable truth: that a single man hid behind smiles and church handshakes while murdering women across multiple counties for decades. But another DNA profile inside Emily Carter's burial site suggested something investigators feared almost as much as the killings themselves. Someone may have known, someone may have helped, someone may have watched. Detective Laura Bennett locked herself inside the evidence review room for nearly 11 straight hours, studying the forensic report again and again while rain hammered against the sheriff department windows outside. The unidentified female DNA appeared only in trace amounts recovered from beneath the outer plastic sheet wrapped around Emily's body. Contamination remained possible after nearly 3 decades, but analysts believe the transfer pattern suggested physical contact during burial rather than random environmental exposure, meaning a woman may have touched the plastic while Emily lay dead beneath it. The question poisoned everything. Karen Reeves immediately became the center of renewed scrutiny. Investigators hated the idea. Publicly, Karen appeared broken, terrified, manipulated by years of psychological abuse. Her interviews felt genuine. Trauma specialists believed she suffered severe coercive control throughout the marriage, but detectives could not ignore the evidence. They reopened every statement she ever gave. Tiny inconsistencies surfaced quickly. Karen originally claimed she never entered Daniel's garage during the 90s. Later, she admitted discovering muddy women's shoes there in 2001. She initially insisted Daniel never discussed the murders directly, then revealed fragments of confessions spanning decades. Individually, the contradictions seemed understandable under trauma and stress. Together, they created doubt. Bennett arranged another interview immediately. Karen arrived pale and exhausted beneath heavy police protection because by then public hatred toward the Reeves family had reached dangerous levels. Protesters surrounded motels where relatives stayed. Online threats flooded social media hourly. Someone spray-painted "You Knew" across Karen's sister's house 2 counties away. Inside the interview room, Karen trembled before Bennett even asked questions. Then Bennett placed the forensic report on the table. There was female DNA at Emily Carter's burial site. Karen stopped breathing. "You need to tell me everything now." For several seconds, Karen said nothing. Tears formed instantly in her eyes. Then she whispered something investigators would replay repeatedly afterward, searching for meaning hidden between the words. "I thought he was cleaning up an accident." The statement cracked the room open. According to Karen's revised testimony, Daniel returned home around dawn the morning after Emily disappeared covered in mud and behaving strangely. He ordered Karen to help wash plastic sheets and work clothes in the garage before daylight. When she asked what happened, Daniel allegedly told her he hit a girl with a truck during an argument and panicked. Karen claimed she never saw Emily's body, never saw blood, never understood the truth fully until years later. But Bennett noticed something disturbing while Karen spoke. Every sentence focused carefully on what she did not know rather than what she remembered. Trauma experts later explained this behavior often appears in individuals attempting psychologically to separate themselves from unbearable guilt. Then Karen revealed another secret. 2 days after Emily Carter's funeral, Daniel burned several items behind the garage late at night. Karen saw him throw something metallic into the fire before he suddenly noticed her watching. She described his expression as empty, not angry, not emotional, empty. According to Karen, Daniel walked toward her slowly afterward and said something she never forgot. "If you ever make me explain myself, you'll disappear too." Detective Bennett believed the threat completely, but one detail still bothered her deeply. Why would Daniel risk involving Karen at all if he operated so carefully for decades? The answer emerged through behavioral analysis later that week. Experts concluded Daniel likely viewed Karen less as a partner and more as an extension of a controlled environment. Organized predators frequently manipulate spouses into passive complicity through fear, confusion, and fragmented truths. By revealing partial information, Daniel may have psychologically trapped Karen inside the secret itself, and perhaps he enjoyed that power. Meanwhile, the investigation uncovered another devastating clue hidden inside Daniel's notebooks. One page contained repeated references to the girl from church. At first, analysts assumed the phrase referred to Emily or another known victim. Then investigators discovered a missing persons report from 1987 involving 15-year-old Rebecca Vance, a church volunteer who disappeared after evening choir practice 7 years before Emily Carter's murder. Rebecca's body was never found. Her case remained one of the oldest unresolved disappearances, connected geographically to Black Hollow. The timing horrified detectives because it suggested Daniel Reeves may have begun killing even earlier than previously believed. Search teams returned to church property immediately. Ground-penetrating radar scanned wooded land behind the old fellowship hall, while aging congregation members watched silently from parking lots overwhelmed by the realization that evil may have existed beside them since the 80s. Elderly volunteers who once organized candlelight vigils for Rebecca Vance now stood shaking beneath winter skies, while excavation crews cut through frozen earth searching for remains. They found nothing, at least initially, but investigators uncovered something else instead. A witness, 73-year-old former groundskeeper Walter Briggs, contacted authorities after seeing television coverage about Rebecca's case reopening. Briggs remembered Daniel Reeves clearly because Daniel volunteered frequently at church during the late 80s, despite being significantly older than most youth members. Then Briggs described an incident from summer 1987 investigators never heard before. One evening after choir rehearsal, Briggs saw Rebecca Vance arguing with Daniel behind the fellowship building near the woods. According to Briggs, Rebecca appeared frightened. Daniel grabbed her arm aggressively before noticing Briggs watching nearby. The next day, Rebecca disappeared forever. Why didn't Briggs report this earlier? Fear. Daniel's family held influence inside the church community for years. Briggs convinced himself he misread the situation. Then time buried the memory beneath decades of guilt. Now investigators had another potential victim, another vanished girl, another shadow stretching backward through time. The case grew so massive federal analysts created a dedicated task force operating from temporary offices outside Black Hollow. Detectives from 5 counties shared missing persons files, while forensic genealogists worked continuously identifying recovered remains. Families arrived daily, carrying photographs, hoping finally to learn what happened to daughters, sisters, cousins lost decades earlier. Some received answers. Others received silence. Then came the most disturbing development yet. During a routine review of old Black Hollow police records, analysts uncovered evidence suggesting Daniel Reeves may have interacted repeatedly with the original Emily Carter investigation, far more closely than anyone realized. Not as a suspect, as an informant. Buried inside archived notes, investigators found records showing Daniel voluntarily contacted police 6 separate times during the 1994 search effort, claiming he saw suspicious vehicles near Rosie's Grill. He provided descriptions, suggested locations to search, offered theories about truck drivers passing through town. Every lead wasted time. Every lead pulled investigators farther away from him. Behavioral experts consider the revelation deeply significant. Many organized offenders insert themselves into investigations to monitor progress, manipulate direction, or psychologically relive crimes through proximity to authorities. Daniel wasn't hiding from the search. He was participating in it. And suddenly Detective Bennett understood something terrifying about the funeral smile captured decades earlier on videotape. It wasn't relief. It was confidence. He believed he had already won. Meanwhile, inside county jail, Daniel Reeves finally broke his silence unexpectedly during a late-night medical evaluation after suffering another violent panic episode. According to confidential reports, he began muttering repeatedly about the woods behind St. Mary's. St. Mary's Church. the same location connected to Rebecca Vance. Bennett ordered emergency excavation crews deployed before sunrise. Floodlights illuminated the church woods, while freezing wind tore through trees overhead. Search dogs moved slowly across uneven ground thick with roots and dead leaves. Parishioners gathered nearby, praying silently, while reporters broadcast live from behind barricades. At 11:26 a.m., cadaver dogs alerted near an overgrown drainage ditch less than 200 yards from the fellowship hall. Excavation began immediately. 3 hours later, investigators uncovered a rusted necklace tangled beside skeletal remains buried shallow beneath decades of earth. Dental records confirmed the identity by nightfall. Rebecca Vance, missing since 1987, 15 years old. Daniel Reeves was 25 when she vanished. The discovery destroyed whatever illusions remained about escalation or accidental violence. Rebecca became the earliest confirmed victim, meaning Daniel Reeves' murder for at least 14 years undetected. And according to the tally marks carved into Alicia Monroe's grave covering, investigators still believe one victim remained undiscovered somewhere beyond every body already recovered. Then forensic analysts made another horrifying realization. The tally marks numbered 7. But Rebecca Vance's remains were never counted there, because Alicia Monroe's grave was prepared years after Rebecca disappeared, meaning the total victim count may already exceed the carvings entirely. And somewhere beyond the frozen forest surrounding Black Hollow, another grave was still waiting. Part 8. The discovery of Rebecca Vance broke something inside Black Hollow that investigators could actually measure. School attendance dropped sharply the following week. Church membership collapsed almost overnight. Parents stopped allowing children outside after dark, even though Daniel Reeves sat locked behind reinforced concrete and still 24 hours a day. Fear no longer depended on the killer being free. Fear became historical, contaminated. People looked backward through decades wondering how evil survived unnoticed among birthday parties, church picnics, baseball games, and neighborhood cookouts, while girls vanished one after another beneath the same quiet skies. And Detective Laura Bennett still believed another victim remained hidden somewhere in the woods. The tally marks would not leave her mind. 7 lines carved carefully into plywood, covering Alicia Monroe's grave, but investigators now confirmed 6 victims already tied directly to Daniel Reeves: Rebecca Vance, Nicole Barrett, Rachel Mercer, Emily Carter, Alicia Monroe, Samantha Pike, and depending how analysts interpreted evidence from Hollow Creek, possibly Megan Lawson as well. The numbers no longer fit cleanly, unless the carvings represented something else entirely, or unless investigators still miss bodies. Inside the temporary Federal Command Center outside Black Hollow, walls became covered with photographs of missing women spanning nearly 20 years. Detectives circled dates, travel routes, employment records, weather reports, and burial timelines, searching desperately for patterns hidden between crimes. Behavioral analysts reconstructed Daniel's life almost month by month from the late 80s onward. One detail emerged repeatedly: periods of silence, months or even years where no known disappearances aligned with his movements. Experts warn investigators not to assume inactivity during those gaps. Organized predators frequently pause after close calls, relationship changes, injuries, or increased public attention. Sometimes they relocate temporarily. Sometimes victims simply remain undiscovered. Then analysts found another anomaly. In spring 1993, 1 year before Emily Carter disappeared, Daniel Reeves missed nearly 3 weeks of work after claiming he injured his back during a supply delivery. Employment records showed no hospital visit, no workers' compensation claim, nothing verifying the injury. But investigators discovered something else from the same period: a missing persons report. 22-year-old Claire Holloway vanished while driving home from nursing classes 50 miles south of Black Hollow on April 11, 1993. Her abandoned car was discovered near an isolated service road beside heavily wooded land. Witnesses reported seeing a dark pickup truck parked nearby during severe rainstorms the night she disappeared. Claire's body was never found. Until now, detectives considered the case unrelated because no forensic evidence connected it to Daniel Reeves. But when Bennett reviewed photographs from the original scene, something caught her attention immediately. Tire impressions. The pattern resembled industrial all-terrain tires identical to ones Daniel purchased repeatedly through Grayson Hardware Supply during the early 90s. Search teams mobilized before dawn. The service road near Claire Holloway's disappearance had become almost inaccessible after decades of overgrowth swallowed the surrounding forest. Trees leaned across broken asphalt, while flood damage collapsed sections of drainage ditches into deep mud. Investigators used heavy equipment just reaching the original site. Search dogs reacted almost instantly. Cadaver alerts triggered near an embankment hidden behind thick brush less than 200 yards from where Claire's abandoned vehicle was discovered in 1993. Excavation crews worked carefully through freezing wind, while television helicopters circled overhead broadcasting every movement nationwide. By then, the country followed the investigation obsessively. Each new search felt like opening another grave inside America's memory. At 4:17 p.m., forensic teams uncovered skeletal remains wrapped inside deteriorated plastic. Female, young adult, evidence of blunt force trauma. Another burial. Another victim. Dental records later confirmed the remains belonged to Claire Holloway. The victim count rose again. And suddenly investigators understood why Daniel Reeves disappeared from work afterward claiming injury. Digging graves in frozen ground destroys the body physically. That realization sickened everyone involved, because it meant Daniel likely remembered each burial in intimate detail. The depth, the soil, the weather, the exhaustion afterward. Meanwhile, prosecutors prepared for one of the most massive homicide trials in state history. Charges expanded weekly as forensic confirmations arrived. Legal analysts predicted Daniel Reeves would spend the remainder of his life inside a concrete cell even without additional discoveries. Yet families demanded more than imprisonment. They wanted truth. Where were the others? How many more existed? Why did he choose them? Daniel continued refusing full confession. Sometimes he spoke in fragments during interrogations. Sometimes he smiled silently for entire hours while investigators presented evidence. Then, unexpectedly, he asked for Detective Bennett alone. The meeting occurred just after midnight inside Interrogation Room 3, where Emily Carter's original case files once sat decades earlier gathering dust. Bennett entered carrying nothing except a recorder and notebook. Daniel appeared thinner now, paler, dark circles beneath his eyes from months inside county jail. But his expression remained unervingly controlled. For several minutes, he simply watched her. Then he asked a question. "Do you know what snow sounds like?" Bennett said nothing. Daniel leaned forward slowly. People think snow is quiet. It's not. Snow swallows things. That's different. The statement sent cold through her spine because Emily Carter vanished during a blizzard. Rebecca Vance disappeared during heavy winter frost. Several burial sites showed evidence of weather concealment. Daniel clearly obsessed over environmental conditions. Then he said something even worse. They all thought somebody would save them. Bennett finally spoke. "How many were there?" Daniel smiled faintly. "You still haven't found a river girl." River girl. The phrase detonated instantly inside Bennett's mind. Because none of the recovered victims disappeared near a river except Megan Lawson, whose remains investigators already found in Hollow Creek, meaning Daniel referenced someone else. Bennett pressed aggressively afterward, but Daniel retreated immediately behind silence again. Attorneys terminated the session minutes later. Still, investigators now had another clue. River, water, female victim, unrecovered. Search operations expanded toward waterways across 3 counties. Divers re-examined old flood channels and reservoirs connected to Daniel's historical travel routes. Geographic profilers focused heavily on areas he could access quickly after work shifts without attracting attention. Then another breakthrough arrived from forensic genealogy. DNA recovered from the unidentified crying woman in the Polaroid photograph partially matched a missing teenager named Vanessa Grady, who disappeared in 1990 after leaving a county fair 70 miles outside Black Hollow. Witnesses last saw Vanessa entering a dark pickup truck after becoming separated from friends near the parking area. No body was ever found. until investigators searched an abandoned riverside dumping site mentioned vaguely in one of Daniel's notebooks. Beneath layers of industrial scrap metal and flood debris, divers uncovered skeletal remains weighted with concrete blocks. Vanessa Grady, 17 years old, the girl from the Polaroid, alive when the photograph was taken. The recovery horrified even veteran investigators because forensic evidence suggested Vanessa survived captivity for several hours before death. Analysts studying the photograph realized she appeared restrained inside Daniel's truck while crying directly toward the camera. He documented her terror, possibly intentionally. National outrage exploded afterward. Protesters gathered outside county jail, demanding execution before trial even began. Politicians referenced the case publicly during speeches about violent offenders and forensic technology. Online communities dissected every recovered notebook entry, searching for hidden clues. Some people called Daniel Reeves a monster. Others refused to use his name at all. But Detective Bennett cared only about the numbers. Because of Vanessa Grady identified, investigators now connected 8 victims directly or circumstantially to Daniel Reeves. 8, more than the tally marks, which meant one of 2 terrifying possibilities had to be true. Either investigators misunderstood the carvings completely, or Daniel Reeves killed victims nobody would ever identify. The thought became unbearable after another forensic review uncovered evidence that at least 2 recovered bodies contained signs of post-mortem staging. Daniel repositioned victims carefully after death, arranged clothing, wrapped plastic methodically. Experts believe the behavior reflected ritualistic control rather than simple concealment. He wanted order, memory, ownership, and somewhere within that ritual, investigators believe the tally marks held meaning. Then, late one freezing December night, Detective Bennett received an emergency call from county jail. Daniel Reeves attempted suicide. Guard discovered him unconscious inside his cell after he sliced deep wounds across both wrists using sharpened fragments from a broken plastic food tray. Medical teams stabilized him barely in time. Blood covered the floor, walls, bedding. Yet according to correctional officers, the most disturbing part came moments before he lost consciousness. He kept repeating one sentence over and over. She's still alive. Not buried. Not dead. Alive. And suddenly the entire investigation changed again. Part 9. The word spread through Black Hollow before sunrise. She's still alive. By morning, every major news network in the country repeated the sentence in endless loops while helicopters circled above the county jail where Daniel Reeves lay under armed medical supervision after nearly bleeding to death inside his cell. Commentators argued over what the statement meant. Some believed it was manipulation, another psychological game from a killer who spent decades controlling investigations through confusion and fear. Others believed the obvious possibility no one wanted to confront directly. Somewhere out there, one of Daniel Reeves' victims might still be alive. Detective Laura Bennett refused to dismiss either theory. Inside the Emergency Command Center, analysts rebuilt every unidentified lead connected to the case from the beginning. Maps covered entire conference tables now. Photographs of recovered victims stare from walls beside lists of missing women spanning nearly 20 years. Federal profilers warned investigators not to underestimate Daniel's need for control. Organized predators sometimes weaponize hope itself, feeding investigators false possibilities simply to maintain emotional power over victims' families. But Bennett kept returning to one detail. Daniel attempted suicide immediately after Vanessa Grady's identification. Why then? Why not earlier after Emily Carter? Why not after Alicia Monroe? Something about Vanessa's recovery destabilized him psychologically. Experts suggested her identification may have threatened a secret he considered more dangerous than exposure itself. Then forensic analysts uncovered another clue hidden inside the Polaroid photograph. Using enhanced imaging technology, specialists isolated faint markings reflected in the truck window behind Vanessa Grady. At first, the shapes appeared meaningless. But after digital reconstruction, investigators identified partial letters from an old roadside sign. Riverdale Motel. The property sat outside a tiny highway town nearly 90 miles from Black Hollow. And according to abandoned business records, Daniel Reeves stayed there repeatedly during supply delivery routes in the early 90s. Bennett deployed immediately. The Riverdale motel looked almost dead when investigators arrived. Half the rooms boarded shut. Neon sign flickering weakly above cracked asphalt stained by decades of oil leaks and rainwater. The elderly owner barely remembered Daniel Reeves at first until detectives showed older photographs. Then his expression changed instantly. He always asked for room 12. The owner explained Daniel rented the same isolated back room repeatedly between 1989 and 1994, sometimes disappearing for entire nights before returning covered in mud or soaked from rainstorms. He usually paid cash, rarely spoke, occasionally arrived with young women who never appeared again by morning. The statement froze the room. Detectives secured the property immediately. Forensic teams ripped apart room 12 within hours. Layers of paint peeled away beneath ultraviolet light, revealing old blood traces invisible for decades. Beneath damaged floorboards, investigators recovered strands of long female hair sealed inside cracks near the bed frame. DNA testing later connected one sample directly to Vanessa Grady, meaning she was held there alive. The motel transformed instantly from forgotten roadside stop into active crime scene. Then came another discovery. Inside the crawl space beneath room 12, investigators uncovered a rusted metal box wrapped carefully in plastic. The contents horrified everyone present. Photographs. Dozens of photographs. Women tied to chairs. Women unconscious. Women crying. Some matched known victims. Others matched nobody. But one image stopped Detective Bennett cold. A young woman staring directly into the camera. Alive. Older than the others. Dark hair cut unevenly short. Thin. Terrified. On the back of the photograph, written in Daniel Reeves' handwriting, investigators found 3 words. Still learning obedience. No name. No date. Nothing else. Behavioral analysts believe the image looked newer than the others, possibly taken during the early 2000s, long after investigators previously assumed Daniel stopped killing. The woman's identity became the task force's top priority overnight. Then another breakthrough arrived from Daniel's medical evaluation inside county jail. While sedated after surgery, Daniel repeatedly whispered a female name investigators never encountered before. Anna. At first, analysts assumed the name meant nothing. But when cross-referenced against unresolved disappearances near Daniel's delivery routes, one file emerged immediately. Anna Delaney. Missing since 2003. 26 years old. Last seen leaving a grocery store parking lot 70 miles east of Black Hollow. Unlike other victims, Anna's disappearance never attracted major media attention because she struggled with drug addiction and unstable housing. Police initially classified her case as voluntary disappearance. Few investigators pursued it aggressively, but now the similarities became impossible to ignore. Dark pickup truck reported near the scene. Heavy rainfall that night. No financial activity afterward. And according to one witness statement buried deep inside the original case file, Anna mentioned a strange man from the hardware company bothering her weeks before she vanished. Detective Bennett reopened the file personally. Then she noticed something even stranger. Anna Delaney shared the same last name as retired Detective Frank Delaney, the original investigator obsessed with Daniel Reeves years before the case reopened. Frank's niece. The realization hit Bennett like ice water. She contacted the retired detective's surviving family immediately. Frank Delaney died in 2016, believing he failed Emily Carter permanently. According to relatives, he became consumed during his final years by the suspicion that Daniel Reeves murdered more women than anyone realized, including Anna, because shortly before her disappearance, Anna reportedly told relatives an older man kept following her near bus stations and convenience stores. Frank suspected Daniel almost immediately, but lacked evidence. The obsession destroyed him emotionally. He retired early, drank heavily, alienated friends and family, chasing theories nobody wanted to hear. And now, years after his death, he may have been right all along. Search teams expanded again. This time, investigators focused on abandoned properties connected indirectly to Daniel through old business contracts and temporary storage rentals. One property drew immediate attention: a collapsed farmhouse outside Riverton County Daniel accessed repeatedly through supply deliveries during the early 2000s. Neighbors described strange activity there for years. Lights at night, vehicles arriving after midnight, women screaming once during a thunderstorm around 2003. Nobody investigated because the property sat isolated beyond miles of farmland, where people learned long ago not to interfere in strangers' business. When detectives entered the farmhouse basement, they found chains bolted directly into concrete walls. The air smelled rotten even after years of decay. Mattresses stained dark beneath mold. Handwritten tally marks scratched into wooden support beams. And in the far corner beneath collapsed shelves, investigators discovered something almost impossible to comprehend: fresh food wrappers, recent footprints. Someone had been there recently, very recently. The farmhouse became locked down instantly while tactical teams swept surrounding land expecting possible accomplices or squatters. But they found nobody. Then forensic analysts uncovered the most terrifying detail yet. DNA recovered from a coffee cup inside the basement matched a female profile never entered into any criminal or missing persons database, meaning